Hi, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here for your next PB&J card class. Today I'll be making a set of winter-themed thank you cards using Etched branches, the slapstick cling stick, Nature's Gifts, and also Nature's Friends. And here's a look at all four of the cards, and we'll be creating all four in today's video. To begin, we'll make the first card using the Etched branches stamp. And this stamp is really great for all seasons, but today I'll be making a winter thank you card that would be great for Christmas gifts or the New Year. I'm using a pair of good watercolor brushes, and I'll be doing all of my painting using Sakura Koi watercolors. This is the Pocket Field sketch box. It comes with a little palette that I'll be using to mix my colors. So I just wanted to show you what I'd be doing because part of this will be off camera. So I'll mix my own colors up on this palette. And I'm painting on Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, and I am painting on the more textured side. I've also got just some clean water, a dish of that on the side. And you can see here how I can easily mix up my own colors on the palette. A lot of the colors I do like to add a touch of gray just to tone them down a little bit. And for this card to begin with, I'm going to do a wet into wet technique. So I put down just a light layer of water onto the watercolor paper, and then I'm dropping that color into the water. This creates a nice loose blended feel where I can add a variety of colors like the purples and the blues, and they naturally blend into each other. Just going to add a little bit of that up to the side. Now this area that I just painted will kind of be like the ground where the base of the branches will be stamped into. So now I'm going to do the sky. You can see I'm putting down the water first, and then I'm going to drop the colors into that water. I like to start real light, and these watercolors do dry a lot lighter than they first appear when they go on the cardstock. So you'll see me paint the colors on, dry it, and go back and add more color. This just adds a lot of texture and vibrancy, especially on this one where I wanted a real bright color palette. I'm not going all the way down to the blue. I'm going to paint a horizon line on there that is like a snowbank, and you'll see me do that in just a minute. So I've dried the piece, and now I'm going back in. I'm going to paint that horizon line with just a very light blue to give the appearance of snow and shadow. And then I'll do the same thing down here on this snowbank, adding the blue and lots of water to blend. And I'm going to darken this up just a touch now that it's had some time to dry and I can add more color. And I'm back again on the sky, darkening that up as well. You can see I've mixed my own color there on the palette, and then I'm pulling it in and adding it onto the paper, and then adding water to blend it. Now I'm ready to do my stamping, so I have the Etched branches stamp, and I'm inking that with StazOn ink in the color of Midnight Blue. And I'm going to stamp it right there along the blue portion that I painted. And I want to add pretty good pressure to the stamp because I did do the painting on the textured side of the watercolor paper. Now that that's down, I'll make sure that it's completely dry. And you can see how easy with just a little bit of watercolor painting in the background and this stamp you can create your own winter scene. I think this stamp would also be really nice for any season. You could do it in browns and oranges for fall, even green paired with flowers for the spring or summer would be nice. Just to tie that stamping into the painted area, I'm going in and darkening the area right at the base of the stamp, so it just looks a little bit more grounded. And I'm flicking some paint of the blue paint onto the card. At first I thought I just wanted it here down at the bottom, but I will go back and add a little bit to the top. And all I've done is add my sentiment. I stamped that with VersaFine Onyx black ink and mounted the watercolor piece to my note card. On this next card, I went for a minimalist modern look. And I'm going to begin by mixing up my color here on the palette. I added a lot of gray and then also added some green into that. And then I'm going to paint that right along the very bottom. Just like the other card, you'll see me building up lots of layers of color. And because the area is wet, it's easy to blend those two colors together. When I go in here and add this lighter green, add some water there, and that easily blends up into the sky as well. I went ahead and dried that before I added my next color. This is going to be more of a blue or a turquoise. And I wanted this to be very, very light in the sky. So I'll put down the paint and then quickly go in with quite a bit of water and blend it. I also wanted areas of white to give the feeling of clouds. Now to add some movement on the right hand side, I'm putting some paint onto my acrylic block, and I'm just going to smoosh my paper, that's the technical term, onto that paint. And I really love the movement that this added to the sky and to the entire piece. Like before, I'm darkening up the bottom. Blending in some more green. And I'll also add a touch of that gray-green up into this portion of the sky. Now I'm ready to add my stamping. I love these tiny little birds from the Nature's Friends set. And I'm going to stamp them with Cloudy Sky. You'll see me here, I was just testing the color on a piece of scratch paper before I stamped onto the card. And I'll add the other two birds. One thing I really love about these Winter Wonderland stamps from Penny Black is that they're great for creating winter scenes and Christmas cards, but they're also great for all year round. This card definitely doesn't scream winter. It could be more of a spring scene even. To finish it off, I just stamped the thanks on the bottom left-hand corner. Now this next card is what I imagine to be sort of what it would look like for the first snow. It might come down in the fall. So this background is going to have a lot of fall colors. I'm adding browns and yellows and grays. But I've masked off the bottom portion of the card to create a snowbank. And to do that, I use painter's tape. And for the top part, I tore that so it wouldn't have a perfectly straight edge. And then I pressed it onto my shirt just to remove some of the stickiness. And then I put it onto the watercolor paper. And then to make sure I didn't get any paint or smudges below that, I added another piece of painter's tape. This background is a very loose technique, so the paper is wet, and I keep dropping in different colors of gray and yellow and brown and letting them mix and blend together, letting the water do that work. You'll notice that sometimes I swipe my paintbrush or kind of sweep it across the paper, but a lot of times I also pat it or pounce it onto the paper to add the color. If this is a new technique to you, this might be a great place to start, because no matter really what you do for colors up at the top, by masking off that bottom portion, it's going to look like snow. So if your colors are brighter, it'll just look more like a sunrise or sunset. You could even do a monochromatic look, so just add lots of different colors of blues and greens. You can see it dried lighter, so I'm going back in now once it was dry and adding more color. And blending it with the water. Now I'm ready to do my stamping. This is from the Nature's Gift set, and I'm going to use a variety of stamps from this set. I wanted this to be very light in the background, so I'm inking it with Memento Toffee Crunch ink. And I'm going to stamp it in a couple of places on the background. This next image is also from that same set, and I wanted it to be more of a background subtle look, so I'm inking this one with Memento Gray Flannel ink, and I'll stamp it in a couple places as well. Then I'm going to use that same image but stamp it in a darker color. So this will be kind of the focal point. And I'm inking this with StazOn ink. Once I stamped that, I felt like I needed a little bit more of that darker brown on the background. So I'm going back with this stamp and just adding a touch of it on each corner, just to balance things out. And I'm splattering a little bit of brown paint to add some more movement to the background. Now I'm going to peel up my mask and reveal the snow. Now you could stop right here and stamp your sentiment and be done, but I wanted to add just a little bit more shadow to that snowbank. So I put a little bit of gray ink and water, tapped my paper to create sort of a drippage effect, and then I'll dry it. This I definitely started light. I was a little bit scared to do it, so I started very light. Once I knew that I really liked it, then I am going back and darkening it up. So adding a little bit darker color right along the edge. Just using a very small brush. And then I'll add even more of that gray along that edge and lots of water to get those drips started and tap it. And another winter thank you is done just by stamping my sentiment and mounting it onto my note card. Now this last watercolor card is probably the most Christmassy of them all, but keeps with that winter theme. And I'm starting again by masking off the snowbank down at the bottom and painting my background. This background is primarily blue and green, so I wanted it to have a nighttime feel. And where I'm planning to stamp the tree is where I'm adding the green. You can see because most of the paper is wet when I add that color in, sometimes swiping the brush across and sometimes pouncing it in, the water naturally wicks it away and blends it into the blue and the green. I've dried it and I'm going back in with another layer, darkening things up. And letting that water flow those colors into each other so there isn't a stark look to where the green stops and the blue begins. There you can see when I drop that color in how it just naturally bleeds and flows on the paper. It's really fun. There I was just looking for placement for that tree. And I'm adding some yellow at the top, kind of a hint at the star across the tree, but a more natural look. Sometimes, like here, I put just a drop of the color that I want and then go back with a clean brush of water and blend it out. That's what I'm doing here as well. I dropped in the color real rich and vibrant right off my palette and then adding the water to blend it. Now I'm ready to do my stamping. I wanted the stamp tree to be pretty dark, so I'm using Memento Northern Pine ink. The background is dry, so I want to be sure that it's dry before I stamp so I get all the detail of the stamp. Now I've pressed that same Northern Pine ink onto my acrylic block so that the splatters I add are the exact same color as the tree. And now this branch is also, this branch stamp is also from the same set, and I'm inking it with VersaFine in the color of Majestic Blue. There is a little bird on that branch, so I covered it with painter's tape because I didn't want that to be in the stamped image. At first I thought I didn't want the branches to go across the tree, but once I stamped it I realized I would like that look. So you'll see here I masked that tree off at first with a piece of scratch paper, but now I'm just going to stamp them right across all along that masked edge. These branches are also really fun to stamp in Versamark ink and then emboss in white if you want to give them a very frosty look. So once I was done stamping, I darkened up the area right along the edge, and I'm also adding a bit of a gray shadow to the taller branches. So just quickly swiping my paintbrush along some of those taller, more singular branches. And I darkened up the tree by adding more green watercolor to the tree. I'm going to peel away the mask to reveal our snowbank. There's always something so fun about peeling away that mask once you're all done painting. And to give this snow just a bit of a shadow, I'm adding in some grays and some blues right along the edge. And over on the left-hand side, I'm also adding just a very light touch of yellow to balance out the yellow that's up in the sky. I'm going back with water to blend that so it doesn't get too dark. For all of these cards, I found some inspiration on Pinterest to give me a starting point for my painting, and I will link to all of those inspiration Pinterest sites in the YouTube description box below. Here's a look at that finished card. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're inspired to give some winter watercolors a try. And for details and more information, visit the Penny Black website, www.pennyblackink.com, and there is a full supply list at the end of the video.